Right, so here we are. The famine in Egypt and the surrounding area has worsened. Jacob sends his sons down to get grain. Joseph immediately recognized them. Of course, they don't recognize him. Who would have thought? They thought he was dead. And now he's second in command in all Egypt. And he comes before him and he decides to have a little fun. And so and his whole intention is, I think personally, it's to teach them some things, but is also to have a more impactful experience. So he tells his brothers to go get Benjamin because I'm sure he knows. Well, first of all, Benjamin's his only full brother. The other brothers are all half brothers. His mom, Rachel, is only the one, right? Joseph. And so he knows he has another brother, Benjamin. And so he wants to see his brother, and he probably knows his dad's not going to be very forthcoming with him because, he knows what it's like to be the golden boy. And now Benjamin is clearly the golden boy. And so they go back, and what Joseph does is he sends them back with grain because he knows that the family needs food. And the money that they gave to him for the food, he has a guy put it back into their backpacks, as it were, into whatever they were using to carry the stuff. And he put the money back and sent them home. And when they got home, they realized that the money was there, and they're like, oh, crud, we are in trouble. And Simeon's back in prison. So they eat the grains, they come back later, and they finally convince Dad to bring Benjamin because he said, we're all going to be dead if we don't bring Benjamin. So Jacob reluctantly sends him back. I think Judah's the one who's in charge of him. And they go back, and they make sure they have both double the money so they have enough to buy back. And so Joseph sees them. Of course, this is all Joseph is just messing with them, I guess. He takes the money, and they're communicating. He sends them back home. He sticks a silver cup, has his porter stick a silver cup in Benjamin's sack and bring it home. And they realize, part of the way, because they start chasing them. And they, hey, and they stop them. They're like, you stole something. And they're like, we didn't steal anything. And of course it was in there. And then they're like, oh no, why is God doing this to us? And so they come back, and Joseph can't take it anymore. He just starts bawling because he loves his family. They were treacherous to him. But then he tells them who he is. So this is chapter 45. I think I'll read, let's see. Have I written down here? I don't want to read all of it. I guess I'll just do 1 through 11. So Joseph could not stand it any longer, and there were many people in the room. And he said to his attendants, out all of you. So he was alone with his brothers when he told them who he was. And he broke down and wept. And he wept so loudly the Egyptians could hear him from the other room. And word of this quickly carried to Pharaoh's palace. I am Joseph, he said to his brothers. Is my father still alive? But his brothers were speechless. They were stunned to realize that Joseph was standing there in front of them. Please come closer, he said to them. So they came closer, and he said again, I am Joseph, your brother, whom you sold into slavery in Egypt. But don't be upset. Don't be angry with yourselves for selling me to this place. It is God who sent me here ahead of you to preserve your lives. The famine that has ravaged the land for 2 years will last 5 more years, and there will be neither plowing nor harvesting. God has sent me ahead of you to keep you and your families alive and to preserve many survivors. So it was God who sent me here, not you. And he is the one who made me an advisor to Pharaoh, the manager of the entire palace and the governor of all of Egypt. Now hurry back to your father and tell him, this is what your son Joseph says. God has made me master over all the land of Egypt. I think that's great, man. So come down immediately, and you can live in the region of Goshen. And there you can be near me and all the children and grandchildren, your flocks and herds and everything you own. I will take care of you, for there are still 5 years of famine ahead of us. Otherwise, your household and all of your animals will starve. It's pretty wild, right? It's, I think it's amazing how God does things, because he never does things the easy way. It's always the hard, weird ways of life. And you're like, God, why don't you just do this, and it'd be so much just easier and cleaner and neater. And God's like, nah. Because there's certain things that you need not only to learn, but you need to grow as a person. And here we see Joseph, who was the golden boy, coat of many colors. He's out there, he's bragging about his dreams and how all of them are going to obviously eventually bow down to him, which obviously happened. But he's kind of saying it in a way that his brothers just despise him for it. And so they finally just sell him off to slave trade. And he ends up going to prison. After saying no to Potiphar's wife, spent quite a few years in prison. And then he gets out and he interprets a dream. And Pharaoh ends up making him second in command. And then Joseph, after all of that, takes everybody in Egypt, like the whole area, all those people, they had to spend all their money to get food. And after they were broke, they had to send all those livestock. And so we were talking about this after the sermon. It's like, why do you think the livestock? And it's like, well, first of all, they probably all would have died because there was no food, because they could have eaten it. But then after they ate that, there would be nothing left. So they were able to take whatever they had left, give it to Pharaoh. So all the livestock went to Pharaoh, and they were able to live and be eaten. And then he took all their land, and then he took all of them. And after they all became slaves, he charged them 20% of everything that they grew for themselves. And it's like, now, I had an interesting conversation with AI this week. I decided to check out AI and what they were saying. It's like, oh no, Joseph was amazing. And I said, yeah, well, what about this? And they're like, that's a good point. And so it was really kind of funny because AI is very dispassionate. It doesn't have a problem admitting, now unlike us, we'll argue till we'll just sit there and argue, even though after a while we realize we're probably wrong, but it's like we have to save face. Evidently, if you're artificial, you don't need to do that. But it was this interesting conversation I was having with this, I don't guess it's really a computer, but it's kind of a computer. Anyway. And as I was because I was trying to, it was like bouncing ideas off. It's like, I don't know Joseph's heart in this narrative. I don't know what the author is trying to say about Joseph, except for the fact that he kind of screwed up pretty badly, right? He messed up in a way that I think hurt people, although it technically saved them. I think of other situations where governments and stuff, and we've talked about this, but just for the sake of saving your life, you're willing to give up everything. You're willing to do all kinds of things to give up your freedoms in order to have safety. And that's kind of what we do, because I'd rather be alive than dead, for Pete's sake, because these people willingly went to Joseph and they said, no, yeah, sure, enslave us, whatever, just so we can live. And it's like, well, but AI's response is, he didn't do it for himself. And I said, how do you know he didn't do it for himself? I mean, sure, it didn't say in the narrative that Joseph got wealthy or got more power off it, but I think we understand that human nature is that Pharaoh was loving what he was doing, right? I mean, Pharaoh was loving the fact that his treasury was expanding. He was getting people, and it was his power. Pharaoh was becoming more and more and more powerful. And you can't help but think that Joseph was getting more power too, but I don't know that for sure. There's more, that's a lot of underlying things in a story. So you look at the situation and you say, maybe he was just trying to do his job well. I don't know. I can't know a person's heart. We can't know a person's heart. All we can know, and the scripture says, we will know them by their fruit. And what that means is, it's not like, you can say all day, I love you, but every time I get near you, you have something mean to say, something biting to say, something cutting, and it's constantly pushing me away. Say, that doesn't feel like love. The actions, you can say certain things, and I don't know what's going on in your heart, but I know by what you are doing, by the fruits that you are doing, that something is wrong. And I don't know exactly what that is. I can't know. I don't know your heart. I don't know your mind. Some of us carry something that happens during the day, and it might be at work. And maybe your boss was nasty to you. And you come home, and you are just in a mood because your boss was a jerk. And you come home, and you're with your loved one, whoever that might be, and it's not like all of a sudden you see your loved one. It's like, oh, it's so good to be with you. It feels so good to be near someone who cares. Nah, you're still annoyed. You're still irritated. So what do you say? How was your day? Shut up. Oh, so it went that well, did it? It's like, come on. Like, what did I? Sorry? Usually you like it. And it's like, no, I'm sorry. It's a bad day. I'm just having a bad day. Just give me a minute. Minute turns into hour. You know how it is. It's like, listen, if I am that person who comes home all aggravated and irritated, there's a certain amount of power that I bring with me into that relationship, whoever that is that's with me, because they love me, and I can use that love as leverage because they're committed to me. And I can use that love as leverage. There's a certain amount of power in that. And I know that if I want someone else to feel what I'm feeling, this person will feel it if I give it to them enough. And they love me enough to stay with me. So now my power is being used for something that isn't good. Do you follow what I'm saying on that? So if I come home and I'm not trying, and I say, listen, we all get irritable. We all have, and it's like, can you give me some time? And maybe I just go off somewhere just to chill, to be alone, do whatever those things are that we do to kind of relax. And the person's like, yeah, absolutely. We give each other that time. If I can't come back and say, listen, I'm sorry that I snapped at you. You see, that's me holding on to the power, right? And if I do say I'm sorry and that person got really annoyed with me and they hold on to that and they say, no, it's okay. But inside they're like, oh, I'm going to get you back somehow, some way. It may not be today, but I'm going to do it. And then we'll get in an argument. We'll be discussing or arguing or something. And then I might bring up, and if I'm the offending person, I might bring up, oh, well, yeah, but how about in 2023? When you came home and you told me to shut up, huh? Or you know what I'm saying. We can hold on to these things. And God's like, listen, God knows our heart. You see, he knows our heart. We can't know each other's heart. We don't know. I can't definitively say why Joseph did what he did. But you see what he did, and it's like that. There had to be another way of doing that was better. But it doesn't mean that Joseph was somehow evil. Joseph wasn't evil. Even if he made some choices that seemed pretty devastating, pretty like... Slavery was a pretty common thing back then. You know, when one group conquered another, they didn't assimilate, they enslaved them, you know. And they assimilate through dominating. You know, that's kind of how it went. And as horrible as those things are, I'm like, you know, Lord, I can't judge Joseph's motives. I just see what he's did, and it could have been done differently. And it's like, yeah, absolutely. It could have been done differently. So if you're ever in a position of power, and we all are, whether that's in our own homes, whether it's in our jobs, whether it's in our classrooms, wherever it might be, we all of us carry a little bit of power. And it's like, now learn to use that power for what is good, for love, not to beat down, not to make your point clearer, not to somehow being able to use your mind, who may be better than the next person's mind, to tear them down. God's like, I've given you a new heart, a new life. I want you to use your power and glorify me through it and love people. You're like, but this person is a jerk. They're horrible. Yeah, but you got to love them. I don't think I do. It's like, no, it's true. You don't have to. But if you want to know my joy, love. Now, love doesn't mean you feel like, oh, they're just amazing. I love them. No. Love is I'm committed to their well-being. So you have that person at work. You have that person at home. You have that person in the neighborhood. Maybe they live next door. And they're just horrible. Just horrible. It's like, God, how do I love this person? How do I use whatever influence, whatever power, whatever I have? How do I love this person? How do I do what's best for them when they are so rotten to me? God's like, I'll show you. Because I don't have an answer for you, if that's what you're looking for. I don't know how God's going to do that, but he wants you to ask him and move on with life. I don't know if Joseph ever once conferred with God. Although later he says, I am a man of God, so therefore I'm going to let you go. Whatever that meant in Egypt. So Joseph does something dumb with what will I say? I don't know if it was dumb or not. It was inappropriate. Let's put it that way. I think it was inappropriate, personally. Other people say, no, it was great. They saved all those people. It's like, yeah, but I don't think he needed to enslave them. Maybe I'm wrong. But then, and I was talking to someone last week, they're like, well, you gave me some stuff to chew on for sure. And they said, because I always understood that Joseph was there to bring the people to Egypt. And I'm like, oh yeah, no, I agree. You see, and this is the beauty of the story, is that Joseph, God brings his brothers to him, and he understands then at that moment that maybe this is why God brought me here. Maybe all the things that I suffered, even at their hands, was so that I could be where I am now, to be able to help, because it's through that family that the Messiah comes. And they are living in Goshen, in this very nice area of Egypt, because Pharaoh thought Joseph was amazing. Joseph was awesome. He was doing amazing things for the kingdom, and as a result of that, he did amazing things for his family. And that's how we end Genesis, with this huge, welcome family, settle in this area. And Pharaoh was like, yeah, absolutely, your family? Hey, your family's my family. Come on, Ashley, land over here, hang out, we'll take care of them, we'll make sure they're... And for years and years and years, they lived there in peace and harmony and goodness. And it says it in Exodus, things start to change. The Pharaoh, after how many decades they were there, the Pharaoh's like, who are these people? They're not Egyptian, and they're living in our land, and they're outnumbering us. Guess what? Let's enslave them. Seemed like everybody's idea of a good time back then. Just enslave people you're scared of, people that could be threatening. So what do we learn? I think a big part of what we learn is that without God, even when we try to do the right thing, we can oftentimes hurt people. Even in the midst of trying it. And I can't speak for anyone else. I can't control anyone else. All I can do is control myself. And that's all you can do is control yourself. You can't control your spouse, you can't control your partner, you can't control a friend, you can't control your children, you can't control anyone else but yourself. But man, we can sure try. And it's kind of fun and frustrating all at the same time. And it's like, okay, God, help me to control myself. When I'm on the road, and I think someone the other day said, from hearing me talk about it up here, you may have a little problem with road rage. I was like, no, not me. I'm Pastor Mike. Like, no, I get on the road, man. These people drive like knuckleheads. It drives me nuts. Drives me nuts. I was getting on the highway from 89 to 91, and this person just hits the brake. The highway was absolutely clear. And I'm looking, and then it's like a stopped car. So I hit the brake, and I hit the horn. And I'm like, and I won't say what I said, but what are you doing? What are you doing? I could have smashed into you. Of course, I wasn't able to say that to them. They just kind of drove off like, I'm left brooding, angry. I saw a piece of my life flash before my eyes. It was what I had for lunch. And then I just it stuck with me. And that little voice is like, Mike, deep breath, exhale, relax. You're all right. Keep going. Let it go. Okay. Do you have an easy time letting go? No, it's hard. It's hard to let go. I mean, some of us, it's easier than others. Some of us pretend we let go. Oh, it's no problem. No, that's fine. I'm good. I'm good. And then something back there. I got some plans for that person. I'm going to say something. Hey, you all right? No. It's going to be good. That's power. And as we end Genesis, all the intrigue, all the violence, all the craziness, there is this continuing line that God is saying. And sometimes I think the author is like, well, God just wiped everybody out. And I'm like, but he didn't wipe everyone out. He saved people. People who weren't listening got wiped out. People who wouldn't listen to either Noah or the messengers and with Lot and all those things, they're the ones who got hurt and got destroyed. They weren't listening to God. And throughout this whole thing, God's like, listen, I love you and I want you to understand. I want you to trust me. But so often we don't do that. And God's like, just trust me. It's throughout all of Genesis, all those narratives, is God is faithful to us. He loves us. And every human being that for a little while is messianic always somehow screws up, messes up. And that's like, but it's not like, oh, there's another one, there's another one. It's more like, wow, I relate. See, I can be like that. But there's redemption. We don't have to stay down. We don't have to sit there and brood over something that's happened to us, or when we've done something wrong to try to excuse ourselves and blame everybody else. Gotta love that. You did this. Well, that's only because you did that. I wouldn't have done that if you hadn't have done that, believe me. Oh, you want to test it? Come on. You know, all of those things, God's like, I want you to trust me. Swallow your pride. Try to love, work at loving, grow in that love, and I will work in your life. All right, I'm out of time, so let's pray. God,